I'm David Ritz. I've been married for 16 years to Jeannie. I have two kids, Annabelle, who's 14, and Levi, who's 11. I run a support network called Red Frog Support Network here in Montreal. It's an international support network that comes from Australia, started in 1997 by Andy Gurley. It expanded to New Zealand, South Africa, Bali, Fiji, Poland, UK, USA, Canada, and most recently France as well. In Canada, it was started at Brock University in the Niagara region in 2011. And then we started it here primarily with McGill in 2015. And so we use the network by being a sober presence in alcohol-fueled environments. And so we just basically get to be the sober best friend. And through that, we get to engage with a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions with students. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Essentially, we had a missional community of primarily McGill students, and we were trying to figure out the best way for us to serve. As we were doing our research, we found that McGill was looking to include more sober initiatives. Be more inclusive of people who didn't necessarily want to engage in intense drinking activities, specifically for frosh. And the one thing that we found out was that while everybody loved the idea of sober initiatives, nobody wanted to be sober to do it. And so we thought, well, who better to do that than Christians? So in 2014, they launched the student unions launched sober leaders and sober groups, and we had a handful of our students, some students from InterVarsity, some students from Power to Change, who all became sober leaders. And as we began to do more research and more digging, we just found that there was a place for doing harm reduction on the campus. And so we just got involved with wherever we could. We did street patrols in the McGill ghetto area during St. Patrick's Day. We just started building our credibility from there. The community at McGill sees the value in what we offer to them, and they like how we're there, we're safe, we're sober at all of our events, and so that has really pushed them to ask us to be more involved on campus. First frosh that we were doing Red Frogs, and we were handing out water like crazy. There was a lot of vomit back in those days. There still is occasionally, but there was a lot more. And we were handing out water. It was very busy. And I heard behind me, there was a girl sitting on the couch, and I heard the whoop splash. And I was just like, oh no. And one of my volunteers panicked a little bit. She's like, I can't. I'm like, it's okay, I got it. And then I was thinking, I don't even like my kids puke. Like this is even worse. So I remember I prayed, I said, Lord, if you want me to do this, then you need to steel my stomach so that I don't add to what's on the floor. And I remember getting down on my hands and knees to start cleaning her legs, her feet, the floor around her. And I sensed the Spirit saying, as you do to the least of these, you do unto me. And I would have to say it's probably one of the most holy, profound moments that I've ever had in one of the most unlikely of spaces. So that really transformed me and transformed my heart, that I'm there to serve Jesus. That's why I'm there. Serving is the bread and butter of being a follower of Jesus. When you look at the parable of the Good Samaritan, the question the lawyer asked was, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus, of course, being Jesus, is like, well, you're a lawyer, how do you read it? And he goes, well, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said, good, but do that and you will inherit eternal life. And then the lawyer asks a very good question of, well, who is my neighbor? And then Jesus unlays the Good Samaritan parable of what it means to serve our neighbors. And so I think that needs to be our priority. I think as we get to know the heart of God, as we become transformed in his image, as we become more like Jesus, loving him with everything we have, all our heart, all our mind, all our strength, we can't help but begin to engage and want to serve our neighbors, the people around us, the people that God has placed right in front of us. It isn't just about holding it in. I mean, Jesus says, like, who lights a lamp and then puts a cover on it? We want our light to shine very, very brightly. So we want to serve and engage, especially in this day and age. We're in an increasingly secular culture, not just here in Quebec, but in North America in general. And so our church reputation isn't great. And so we have to be able to show love unconditionally to people, to be able to explain what our message is all about. And so I think that's a really important motivating factor of just like, now we need to be able to actually express our love in practical, real ways, irrespective of whether or not I have an opportunity to necessarily share a blunt story of the gospel or something like that.
It always starts with that act of obedience,
Mm-hmm.
that little push of, okay, I don't want to do it, God, but let me just go there.
Mm-hmm.
And just something happens. And I think that's where stories just gets created.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there's a lot of Christians who wants to experience that God moments,
Mm-hmm.
but it's very hard to obey at times. So do you have any advice for those who are like afraid to act into that obedience or faith in there, or simply volunteering, or who is interested in volunteering in general?
Yeah, so I get it. It's, the party scene is intimidating if you've never seen it or experienced it. But I do find that once you're there, some of you guys have volunteered. It's probably like really like, oh, at first, but then when we're there and you relax a little bit, it's like you see people are really appreciative of what we do. So it gets I would say don't worry about it as much. But I think when it comes to fear, it's like, where is that fear coming from? Like, where, like, to really evaluate the fear. If you feel like you don't have time to volunteer, I think like being a follower of Jesus again asks us to hold money and time, our two most valuable commodities in life, very loosely, and just hold that before Him. And so I think like, you know, for someone who wants to be more generous with their money, but they're like, oh, I can't, it's going every which direction. It's like, well, do you need budgeting? Do you need help to sit down and like learn how to create a budget and respect your budget? I think time is the same thing. You need to do a time budget, because we need to allow space in our schedules to be able to actually serve those around us, because it's part of the Great Commission. We are told to go. And so I think it's really important as followers of Jesus, if we feel like, oh, we just don't have time, it's like, I get it. Like, I know what it's like to feel like we don't have time. And yet God invites us to hold that loosely. So I would say like come on out, try an event, and see what God would do with you, because it can be very rewarding. Yes, sometimes it's hard. I would say we do have some events that are like heavy and difficult to engage with. That's very valid and very true. But I'd say those are the minority. I'd say for the most part, events go relatively smoothly. And it's amazing to see how we have more time than we think.
The camera's actually still rolling.